Everything you've been through, every win, every failure, every awkward conversation, every sleepless night was rehearsal for the life you're living right now. Whether you realized it or not, you've been training, and it's not the kind of training you signed up for. There wasn't a sign-up sheet, no coach, low and whistle, no official schedule. Life just threw you in, and without asking for your permission, started shaping you. Every job you took, every relationship you were in, every time you moved to a new city or got stuck in the same place, all of it has been preparing you for something you didn't know was coming. When people hear the word training, they think of something deliberate. An athlete putting in hours in the gym, a musician practicing scales over and over, a pilot logging flight hours. That's the obvious kind of training, the visible kind. But there's another type, the invisible kind, and it's happening to all of us every single day. In fact, most of the skills you rely on right now weren't learned on purpose. You picked them up along the way, almost by accident. You learned to stay calm during chaos because at some point you had to. You learned to speak up in a meeting because one day the silence was too heavy to bear. You learned to listen, really listen, because someone you cared about once needed to be heard. It's funny, isn't it? We don't remember the moment we became resilient. We just look back and realize we are. We don't remember when we learned how to navigate uncertainty, but somehow here we are making decisions in the dark and trusting ourselves to figure it out. We don't remember when we stopped flinching at failure, but now we can take a hit and keep moving. That's training. Not the glamorous medal-winning kind, but the kind that's stitched into the fabric of who you are. And here's the thing, we often underestimate it. We underestimate the value of our own experience because it doesn't look like what we imagined. We tell ourselves, I'm not ready for this, without realizing we've already been getting ready for years. Life doesn't give us the luxury of separating the rehearsal from the performance. They're happening at the same time. Every conversation you've had with a difficult person, that was rehearsal for the negotiation you just handled last week. Every time you stayed calm when everything was falling apart, that was preparation for the crisis you're facing right now. Every time you thought you were just surviving, you were actually learning. The moments we wanted to skip, the ones we would never voluntarily repeat, those were the master classes. When you lost the job, when the relationship ended, when the opportunity you thought was perfect disappeared, you weren't just experiencing loss. You were building muscles you didn't know you had. You were learning patience when you were forced to wait. You were learning humility when you had to start over. You were learning adaptability when nothing went to plan. That's training. Not the kind you'd pay for, but the kind that pays you back in ways you don't see until years later. Think about this. Some of the people you admire most didn't get where they are because life was smooth. They got there because they learned how to operate when it wasn't. They learned how to stand back up after getting knocked down. They learned how to speak clearly when they were scared. They learned how to stay focused when the path ahead was messy. And all of that came from living through experiences that didn't feel like training at the time. The mistake we make is thinking that training is something that starts when we decide it does. Once I'm ready, I'll take action. Once I've learned enough, I'll go for it. But readiness is a myth. You don't suddenly wake up one morning and feel perfectly prepared. You become prepared by showing up, even when you don't feel ready. You become prepared by surviving the moments you didn't think you could survive. You become prepared by doing the hard thing again, until it feels less like an emergency and more like second nature. That's what's happening to you right now, whether you realize it or not. Life is running the drills. Every setback is a drill in persistence. Every disappointment is a drill in emotional control. Every unexpected change is a drill in adaptability. The question isn't whether you're training, it's whether you're paying attention to the training you're already doing. Because the more you notice it, the more you can start to use it intentionally. The truth is, the life you're living right now didn't just happen. You've been building toward it for years, maybe without a plan, maybe without a map. But you've been building. Even the things you think were wasted time weren't wasted at all. That job you hated, you learned how to deal with people you didn't like. That project that failed, you learned how to manage risk. That season of uncertainty, you learned how to keep moving without knowing the destination. This is why, when the next challenge comes, and it will, you'll be more ready than you think. You might feel nervous, you might doubt yourself. But deep down, you'll have something to draw from. You'll have a memory of a time you faced something hard and made it through. You'll have the muscle memory of resilience, the instinct to adapt, the confidence that comes from experience. You didn't need a mentor to give you permission. You didn't need a perfect plan. You didn't need all the answers. You just needed to keep showing up. And that's exactly what you did. You've been showing up day after day without realizing the impact it was having. You've been rehearsing for conversations you haven't had yet. You've been practicing for opportunities you haven't seen yet. You've been building the capacity to carry weight you haven't been asked to carry yet. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll find yourself in a moment that feels too big for you. You'll feel like you're standing at the edge of something intimidating. And you'll hear that voice in your head say, I'm not ready for this. But you'll take a breath. You'll remember the last time you thought you weren't ready. And you'll realize you were ready then, and you're ready now. Not because everything will go perfectly. Not because you know exactly what to do. But because you've been training for this life your whole life, whether you meant to or not. The best part, that training never stops. Every day is another chance to refine, to grow, to get better at the things that matter. Which means every struggle, every challenge, every imperfect day, those aren't interruptions to your life. They are your life, and they are preparing you for whatever's next. Most of the skills you rely on today weren't taught to you in a classroom. You didn't sit down with a notebook, take detailed notes, and study for a test. You learned them while life was happening to you, often when you weren't even aware it was teaching you anything. The most important training in your life took place in moments you didn't label as training. And because it happened quietly, you might not even give yourself credit for it. Think about how much of who you are today comes from things you weren't trying to learn. How did you learn to read the room in a tense conversation? Probably not from a leadership course, but from that one dinner where everyone was silent, the air was heavy, and you knew instinctively to trade carefully. How did you learn to stay calm under pressure? Not from a meditation app, but from that day when everything went wrong at once, and you didn't have the luxury to panic. How did you learn to keep going when things felt impossible? From the mornings you didn't want to get out of bed, but you did anyway. This is the invisible curriculum of life. It's not printed anywhere. There's no syllabus. But every single one of us is enrolled in it from the moment we're born. And unlike the training you choose, this training doesn't ask for your permission. It just happens. Every argument you've had, every disappointment you've faced, every uncomfortable decision you've made, each one was a lesson, even if it didn't feel like one at the time. The strange part is we tend to downplay it. We tell ourselves that unless a skill came from a formal setting, it's not real. But the truth is your unconscious training shapes you more than anything you learned on purpose. A manager can give you a leadership book, but you learned the real art of leadership the day you had to keep a team together during chaos. A mentor can tell you about resilience, but you learned it when life blindsided you and you had no choice but to figure it out. The habits you carry today, how you react to stress, how you make decisions, how you treat people, those didn't magically appear. They were formed in the quiet repetition of everyday moments. You didn't know it then, but you were practicing. Every time you chose to respond instead of react, you were practicing emotional control. Every time you asked a better question instead of making an assumption, you were practicing empathy. Every time you took a risk and faced the possibility of failing, you were practicing courage. It's easy to forget that we are, by nature, pattern-seeking beings. Our brains store experiences, and over time, we start acting based on those stored patterns without even thinking. That's why the person you is not an accident. The way you deal with conflict, pattern. The way you encourage someone who's struggling, pattern. The way you handle uncertainty, pattern. And every one of those patterns was created by repetition, your repetition. And here's where it gets interesting. Because so much of this training happened unconsciously, you might be carrying habits and patterns that were built without your permission. Some of them help you. Some of them hold you back. If you were raised in an environment where mistakes were punished, maybe you learned to play it safe. If you worked under a leader who micromanaged everything, maybe you learned to doubt your own judgment. These patterns didn't come from a deliberate choice. They came from repeated exposure. That's the double-edged sword of unconscious training. It shapes you whether you like it or not. And because it happens without awareness, we often let it run our lives without questioning it. The challenge then is to notice it, to pay attention to the training you've been getting so you can decide whether to keep it or unlearn it. Because unlearning is just as important as learning. But even the habits you don't like were once survival tools. They made sense in the environment where you learned them. Maybe your instinct to avoid confrontation kept you safe once. Maybe your tendency to over-prepare came from a time when being unprepared had real consequences. These patterns might not serve you now, but they served you then. And recognizing that helps you approach change with compassion instead of frustration. There's also something powerful about realizing just how much of your competence comes from this kind of quiet background training. It means you don't need to have every answer written down in advance. You can trust that the situations you've already lived through have given you a kind of muscle memory. The next time life throws you into something unfamiliar, you'll find yourself reaching for skills you didn't even remember learning. You'll just know what to do, not because someone told you, but because your life already taught you. And that's why your unconscious training is worth noticing. Because once you're aware of it, you can make it intentional. You can choose what to reinforce. You can catch yourself in an old pattern and replace it with a new one. You can ask better questions about why you do what you do. And the more you do that, the more you turn accidental training into deliberate mastery. The reality is, life is always shaping you. Every conversation, every decision, every challenge, it's all training. And when you see it that way, you stop waiting for the real preparation to start. You realize it already started years ago without you even noticing. You've been in the arena this whole time. You've been rehearsing for the roles you didn't know you'd play. You've been building the skills you'd need long before you knew you'd need them. So the next time you doubt whether you're equipped for what's in front of you, remember this: you've already done more training than you think. It didn't come in the form of lessons or lectures. It came in the form of life. And it's still happening right now, in this very moment. The difference between people who keep growing and people who stay stuck isn't who had better opportunities. It's who pays attention to the opportunities they've already had. The raw material is there. The question is whether you'll use it. Some of the most valuable lessons you've learned didn't come wrapped in comfort. They came dressed as pain. You didn't ask for them. You didn't sign up for them. And if you had the choice, you probably would have avoided them entirely. But pain is a reluctant teacher. It doesn't want to be liked. It doesn't care about making a good impression, and it never shows up at a convenient time. Yet, when you look back, you realize that some of the strongest parts of who you are were built during the hardest seasons of your life. When you think about it, comfort rarely forces you to grow. Comfort tells you that you're fine where you are. It lets you relax, but it also lets you stagnate. Pain, on the other hand, has a way of pulling you forward, even if you're kicking and screaming the whole way. It forces you to adapt because staying the same becomes impossible. You can't go through loss, failure, rejection, or disappointment and remain unchanged. You either break or you build, and more often than not, you end up building. Pain is the place where resilience is forged. You don't develop resilience when things are going well. You develop it when things are falling apart and you have no choice but to hold it together. You don't learn patience when everything happens quickly. You learn it when you're forced to wait longer than you ever thought you could. You don't build courage by doing things that are easy. You build it when you face something you're terrified of and take a step anyway. And here's the strange thing: when you're in the middle of pain, it doesn't feel like training. It doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like something you want to escape from as quickly as possible. But looking back, you realize that those were the seasons where you discovered parts of yourself you didn't know existed. You discovered that you could endure more than you thought. You discovered that you could keep moving forward with less energy, less clarity, and less certainty than you thought you needed. Some of the people who seem unshakable today didn't start that way. They weren't born with extraordinary strength. They built it. And they built it because life gave them no other option. They lost things they thought they couldn't live without. They faced challenges they thought would crush them, and yet they're still here, different, maybe even scarred, but stronger in ways they couldn't have been otherwise. The reality is, pain forces you into growth you wouldn't choose voluntarily. It strips away what's unnecessary. It reveals what's essential. When everything is comfortable, you can hide behind convenience. But when pain enters the picture, you're forced to see what really matters and who you really are. And often, what you discover is that you are far more capable than you ever believed. It's easy to think of painful moments as interruptions to your life. You imagine your life on one track, and then something bad happens and knocks you off course. But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe pain isn't the interruption. Maybe it's part of the main track. Maybe it's the exact terrain you needed to walk through to get where you were meant to go. Without it, you wouldn't have developed the grit, the patience, the wisdom, or the empathy you have now. And empathy, that's another gift pain gives you. You can't truly understand someone else's struggle until you've been through your own. You can try, you can imagine, but it's not the same. Pain gives you a deeper connection to others because it reminds you that everyone is carrying something. It makes you softer toward people, even as it makes you harder against the challenges you face. That combination, softness toward people, toughness toward life, is one of the most powerful traits a person can have. Pain also teaches you humility. When you're in pain, you can't pretend you have everything under control. You can't fake your way through it. You have to admit that you need help, that you don't have all the answers, that you're human. And while that's uncomfortable, it's also freeing. Because once you accept that you don't have to have it all together, you can stop pretending, you can start being real. And realness is where genuine growth begins. It's important to remember that pain doesn't automatically make you better. Pain is just the teacher. It's up to you whether you learn the lesson. You've probably met people who've been through a lot, but instead of becoming wiser or more compassionate, they've become bitter. That's because pain alone isn't enough. It's what you do with it that matters. You can let pain close you off, or you can let it open you up. You can let it harden you in all the wrong ways, or you can let it make you unbreakable in the right ones. The difference comes down to perspective. If you see pain only as an obstacle, you'll spend all your energy trying to get around it. But if you see it as part of the process, you can start asking different questions. What can this teach me? What strength can I build here? What will this prepare me for in the future? Those questions don't make the pain disappear, but they give it purpose. And purpose changes everything. One day you'll be in a situation where you need every bit of strength you've built. You'll be facing a challenge that seems impossible, and in that moment, you'll draw on something deep inside you, something that came from the days you thought you wouldn't make it through. You'll realize that the very experiences you once wished away are the ones holding you up. The pain that once felt like it was breaking you will turn out to be the foundation you're standing on. That's why pain, as much as we resist it, is one of life's most valuable teachers. It's relentless, it's demanding, but it leaves you better equipped for the future than comfort ever could. Comfort might make you feel good in the moment, but pain shapes who you become. Comfort might keep you where you are, but pain forces you to grow. And so, even though none of us would willingly choose it, we can learn to respect it. We can learn to see it as part of our training, part of the preparation for a life that requires strength, empathy, and courage. Because the truth is, life will keep throwing challenges our way. We don't get to choose whether we face them, but we do get to choose how we face them. And if we remember that every painful moment is an opportunity to train for what's ahead, we can face them with a little less fear and a little more purpose. You don't have to like pain to learn from it. You just have to decide that if you're going to go through it, you're going to come out stronger. That decision doesn't take the sting away, but it does make sure the sting isn't wasted. Because if you're going to pay the price of pain, you might as well collect the reward. When you're in the middle of life, the dots never seem to connect. The events feel random. The struggles feel unrelated. You think, this thing I'm going through has nothing to do with where I want to be. But years later, you look back and realize the truth. You've been living inside a pattern all along. What once felt like scattered moments suddenly forms a picture. And in that moment, you understand that nothing was wasted. It's strange how the mind works. We live forward, but we understand backward. The job you took just to pay the bills taught you skills you're now using in your dream role. The heartbreak that shattered you gave you the empathy to help someone else through theirs. The move to a city you didn't want to be and introduced you to the person who changed your life. At the time, none of it looked connected. But it was. Every step was leading somewhere. Pattern recognition is one of the most valuable abilities we can develop. But it's almost impossible to see the pattern while you're still inside it. You can only recognize it in hindsight. And that's why it's so tempting to doubt yourself in the middle of the journey. When you can't see the full picture, you convince yourself there isn't one. But there almost always is. Here's what makes this so important. Once you realize that your life has been forming a pattern, you start living differently. You stop panicking when things feel disconnected. You stop assuming that the current season is meaningless. You start trusting that what you're learning now will matter later, even if you can't see how yet. That doesn't mean every bad thing will magically turn into something good, but it does mean you can approach challenges with a different mindset. This is here for a reason. I may not understand the reason yet, but one day I will. Think about the times in your life when you thought you'd wasted time. Maybe it was a year you spent in the wrong job. Maybe it was a project that fell apart. Maybe it was a friendship that ended badly. At the time, it felt like a loss. But later, you realized you gained something you didn't expect. Maybe a skill, a lesson, or a new direction. And once you saw that connection, you couldn't unsee it. You realized the so-called detour wasn't a detour at all. It was the road. This is why reflection is so powerful. We move through life so quickly that we don't often stop to look back and connect the dots. But when we do, we notice the themes. We see that we've been learning the same lesson in different forms. We notice that the same strengths keep showing up. And sometimes we even see the ways life has been nudging us towards something all along. The danger is that when we don't recognize the pattern, we can get stuck in it without growing from it. We can repeat the same mistakes over and over because we don't pause to see the connection. That's why awareness matters. The sooner we notice the pattern, the sooner we can use it on purpose. For example, maybe you notice that every time you face a major change, you resist it at first, but then you adapt and come out stronger. That's a pattern. And once you recognize it, you can approach the next change with less fear because you already know how the story usually goes. Or maybe you notice that the biggest breakthroughs in your life have come after moments of deep discomfort. That's a pattern too. And when you see it, you can stop avoiding discomfort and start leaning into it. Patterns also show you what you value most. Maybe every time you've been happiest, you've been surrounded by people who inspire you. Or maybe every time you felt lost, it's been because you were disconnected from your sense of purpose. These patterns are like a personal compass. They point you toward what works and warn you about what doesn't. The other benefit of pattern recognition is confidence. When you can look back and see how the past came together in ways you didn't expect, you start to believe that the present will do the same. You may not know exactly how, but you trust that one day the dots will connect. And that trust makes you bolder. It gives you the courage to take steps without needing all the answers first. Of course, there will always be moments when the pattern isn't clear. Times when the only thing you see is chaos. Times when life feels like a pile of scattered puzzle pieces and you can't even tell if they belong to the same picture. That's normal. That's part of the process. But if you've lived long enough to see dots connect before, you can remind yourself it's not random. You've been here before. You'll see the pattern later. It's a bit like watching a movie for the first time. In the beginning, everything feels unrelated. Different characters, different scenes, different threads of the story. But as the movie unfolds, you start to realize the connections. That side character wasn't random. They'll be important later. That quiet moment in the first act was setting up the turning point in the third. Your life works the same way. And while you can't skip ahead to see how it all plays out, you can trust that the pieces you're living through now are part of a bigger story. And maybe the most empowering thing about recognizing patterns is that you can start creating them intentionally. If you know what experiences have shaped you in the past, you can choose to seek out more of those experiences in the future. If you know which habits have consistently led you to success, you can double down on them. If you know which choices have repeatedly led you to regret, you can stop making them. Life is full of moments that feel disconnected, but every once in a while you get a glimpse of how they fit together. And when you do, it changes how you move forward. You realize that even the hardest seasons were not wasted. They were building you. They were teaching you. They were connecting dots you couldn't see yet. So maybe the question to ask isn't, why is this happening to me? But where might this fit in the bigger pattern of my life? That shift in thinking doesn't give you immediate clarity, but it does give you hope. And hope is often what keeps you moving when the pattern isn't visible yet. Because one day you will look back and the picture will be clearer. You'll see the thread that runs through everything. You'll see how the unplanned moments were the ones that mattered most. You'll see that even when you felt lost, you were still moving in the right direction. And when that day comes, you'll realize that the pattern isn't just something you discover, it's something you create. With every choice, every risk, every act of courage, you're shaping the story that someday you'll look back on and say, of course, it all makes sense now. Well, for most of your life, you've been training without knowing it. That training has brought you here. But from this point forward, you get to decide how you train. You get to choose what kind of person you're becoming. That's the difference between living by default and living on purpose. Up until now, much of what shaped you happened without your awareness. The lessons were hidden in everyday life. The habits formed quietly from repetition and survival. But now you know. Now you can see it. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. You can choose to direct the process instead of just letting it happen. Think about any skill you admire in someone else. Public speaking, problem solving, staying calm under pressure, inspiring others. None of those skills appeared overnight. They were built through deliberate practice. And if you look closely at the life you want to live, you can identify the skills and mindsets you'll need to make it possible. Then you can start training for them on purpose every day. The mistake people make is waiting for the right time to start, waiting for a break in their schedule, waiting until they feel ready. But readiness isn't something you feel first, it's something you build. You don't train because you're ready, you train to become ready. And you do it by showing up over and over again, even when it's inconvenient, even when you don't feel like it, even when progress is invisible. This is where discipline matters. Motivation will get you started, but discipline will keep you going when motivation fades. And it will fade. That's not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's a sign you're human. Training on purpose means committing to the work even when it's boring, even when it's uncomfortable, even when there's no immediate reward. It also means being intentional about your environment. You can't train for growth while surrounding yourself with people and situations that keep you small. If you want to build courage, spend time with people who take risks. If you want to develop patience, spend time with people who move at a thoughtful pace. If you want to strengthen your leadership, spend time with people who hold themselves to a high standard. Training is contagious. The people you're around influence the skills you practice, whether you realize it or not. Another part of training on purpose is choosing the challenges you take on. Life will hand you enough difficulty without your permission, but that doesn't mean you can't seek out the right kind of hard things. Choose challenges that stretch you without breaking you. Choose projects that demand your best thinking. Choose opportunities that scare you just enough to force growth. That's where transformation happens. Not in the comfort zone, and not in the panic zone, but in the space between. And here's the thing, training on purpose isn't just about big moments, it's about what you do daily. Every conversation is a chance to practice listening. Every decision is a chance to practice clarity. Every setback is a chance to practice resilience. When you start to see daily life as a training ground, you stop waiting for someday and start building someday right now. It's also about feedback. If you want to grow intentionally, you have to be willing to hear the truth about where you stand. That means asking for input, not just from people who will tell you what you want to hear, but from people who will tell you what you need to hear. Feedback can sting, but it's one of the fastest ways to improve. It shows you where your blind spots are. It points out where your training needs to focus next. But perhaps the most powerful part of training intentionally is that it gives your future self a gift. Every bit of effort you put in now, every skill you practice, every mindset you strengthen, is an investment your future self will be able to cash in. You may not see the return today, but one day in a high-stakes moment, you'll realize you've prepared for it. You'll feel the muscle memory kick in. You'll know exactly what to do because you've already done it 100 times before in smaller, quieter moments. And that's when you understand the real point of training on purpose. It's not to avoid failure. It's to prepare for it. It's not to make life easy. It's to make yourself strong enough to handle it when it's hard. It's not to control every outcome. It's to trust yourself to adapt no matter what the outcome is. From here on out, every choice you make is either reinforcing the person you want to be or the person you're trying to outgrow. There's no neutral ground. The conversations you have, the books you read, the challenges you take, the people you spend time with, all of it is training. And the more intentional you are, the more aligned your training will be with the life you want. It's not about being perfect every day. It's about being consistent over time. It's about showing up for yourself in small, deliberate ways that compound into something powerful. It's about remembering that the person you're becoming is shaped not just by what you do when everyone is watching, but by what you do when no one is. The beauty of this is that you're in control now. You don't have to wait for life to hand you lessons. You can go find them. You don't have to wait for the perfect opportunity. You can create it. You don't have to rely on accidental growth. You can decide exactly how you want to grow and start working on it today. And yes, you'll still face unexpected challenges. You'll still go through seasons you didn't plan for. But the difference is you'll be ready for them in a way you never were before. Because you won't just be relying on the training life gave you by accident. You'll be drawing from the training you built on purpose. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll face a moment that could define you. You'll be nervous. You'll feel the weight of it. But deep down, you'll have the quiet confidence of someone who's been preparing for this exact kind of moment for years. Not because you were lucky, not because life was easy, but because you trained for it intentionally.